ladies and gentlemen, now hosting the RizzoCast, put your hands together for Steven Risotto!
What is going on, everybody, and welcome. My name is Steven Risotto. I cover the San Francisco Giants for SF Bay, and I'm the host of RizzoCast, a podcast that features current and former big league players, coaches, fans, and media, and also others who are regarded as some of the brightest minds around the game of baseball today. Today's guest is Larry Bowa, one of the most accomplished baseball individuals of his time. Bowa played shortstop at the big leagues for 16 seasons from 1970 to 1985, 12 of which were with the Philadelphia Phillies. During his career, he was regarded as one of the best defensive shortstops in the game, winning 2 Gold Gloves and making 5 All-Star teams. And guess what? He could hit a little bit too, finishing with over 2,100 career major league hits. Bowa started coaching after his career. He managed the Padres for 2 years in the late 1980s and returned to the Phillies dugout to manage them from 2001 to 2004. He spent time on 4 other coaching staffs during his career before retiring in 2017. He is now the special assistant to the Phillies general manager, David Dombrowski. We talk about a lot in this episode. Larry was nice enough to call in. We talk about his career, taking pride in his defense, hitting, some anecdotes kind of on today's game and the difference from when he played in the 70s, so much more. This is episode 139. I almost forgot the number. Let's get started. All right, and we are here with the legendary Philly icon himself, Larry Bowa, and Larry is nice enough to join the show. Larry, how you doing? Welcome.
I'm doing very good. Thank you. A little disappointed we didn't have a good win last night, but the Giants played a better game than us, but we're sort of hanging in there right now. I'm looking forward to us getting jump started here. It's a pretty good team we have right now.
Yeah, of course. And I do want to start with this current Phillies club. They're 20-21. However, they just got one of their superstars back, Bryce Harper. And I mean, Larry, he underwent Tommy John surgery in November and he's back already. I mean, for him to make his way back in this fashion, I mean, what does that say about a guy's character when they're willing and hungry to come back healthy like that?
Well, he really does love baseball. And I think people got to see it last year in the playoffs, how he rose to the occasion, got big hits for us. And the one thing that's eluded him, obviously, is winning a World Series. And he knows that this team is very capable of getting back there again. But up until now, we as a team have been very inconsistent. So hopefully with him back in the lineup, it's going to jumpstart us and get us going in the direction we want to go into.
And he's known as one of the best competitors around and one of the best competitors baseball has to offer. I mean, we just saw the other day, he tried to take on the entire Rockies franchise. Do hard-nosed baseball players like that, do they exist in 2023? Is that still, or, because I guess the common narrative is that, players might be a little softer today. Do you see that narrative?
I still think they exist, but they're far and few between. Harp's one of those guys that could have played 25, 30 years ago, or down the road to play another 25 years. I don't want to use the word soft. I just think that it's a different way to play the game now. The mentality is a little bit different. But, obviously they're great athletes, bigger, faster, stronger. The one thing that I think that when I watch baseball is fundamentals aren't approached the right way. There's a lot of mistakes made in the fundamental part of the game. Obviously, pitchers throwing harder, guys hitting a lot of long home runs. But when it gets down to it, to be honest with you, pitching and defense, eventually, if you're consistent with that, you're going to be involved in the playoffs at the end of the year.
And you're a guy throughout your career and your coaching career as well that was known to be pretty fierce. And fiery. Where did that fire come from? Why did you kind of, how did you kind of become a baseball rat at kind of such a young age?
I think it sort of started at probably when I look back at high school. I got cut 3 years in a row because the coach said I was too small to play. So I sort of use that like a chip on my shoulder. I mean, I didn't have the greatest skills in the world, but I don't think anybody outworked me. I tried to play the game the right way. My dad always said, play 9 innings, 27 outs, like it's the last game you've ever played. And I tried to approach that every day I put the uniform on, because I wasn't gifted with that natural ability. But I also think that because I didn't have that natural ability, I had to work harder. And my work ethic was always at the top of the list. My dad taught me that. My dad played as high as AAA, and so he knew what it would take for me to become a baseball player at a high level. So he taught me how to play the game the right way. And I just think that through my career, I sort of used that as a motivating factor. Didn't play high school, didn't get drafted. So I sort of played, if you want, played with a chip on my shoulder, and that, and it just sort of carried over from year to year. So, looking back on it, I don't think I changed anything. I think I got the most out of my ability. But it was fun. It was a great career for me. And the fact that I never played high school and never got drafted, I think it's something that some kids should listen to and look at and say, hey, don't let anybody tell you can't do something.
Yeah, 100%. We get a lot of youth listeners on this podcast, and I'm sure they're going to hear that and kind of run away with that. That's awesome. And I mean, you're a Sacramento guy, so I mean, you're born and raised in Sacramento. Describe kind of the baseball scene in that specific area, because I know you turn on the TV now, and we see all these guys from Elk Grove and Sacramento. Like,
right.
It's turning into a hotspot. There, it seems like there's a guy on every team from the Sacramento area. So was it kind of like that when you were growing up?
It was a huge hotspot. I mean, we had all kinds of guys sign out of Sacramento. We had during the winter, we had a winter league that existed, and we'd get 1,500, 2,000 people. This was at a park, a land park, watching the games. It played every weekend. The weather was very conducive for us to play during the winter. I mean, you'd have some rain, but most of the temperatures aren't down in the 20s or 15s, and so, I mean, it was a hotbed at that time. Eddie Bachman, who was then our scout and he's since passed, he signed a lot of guys out of Sacramento. But now, like you said, Elk Grove used to be a little bit away from Sacramento. Now it's like a suburb. And there are a lot of players that come from that area. And like I said, you can play baseball all year there, all year round. And they've had not only do they have good colleges there, they have good junior colleges where if guys don't have the academics to get into a big time college, they can go there for a couple of years, and it's been well scouted in that area, the junior colleges. So it's always been a hotbed, but it seems like it's getting back to where it was back when we played.
You ever talk to Reese Hoskins about growing up in that area? Because he's also from that part of the California.
Yeah, Reese is from there. He's going through some tough times right now. Well, not now. I mean, he blew out his knee in spring training. This was his walk year as far as being a free agent, and he's a super guy, and we miss him in that lineup. People sort of overlook that. They always talk about Harp, which we definitely miss, but we also miss Reese Hoskins. But he's a great guy, and I still think that there's a reason for everything, and I really believe that once he overcomes this injury, that he's going to be paid in a way that he thinks he should be paid, because there's not a lot of big-time free agents out there next year. And Reese would be a good addition to a lot of teams. I know the Giants are one team that's close to home for him, and they really don't have what you call an everyday first baseman. So that might be an area, or even the Phillies could re-sign him. So I don't know what his goal is, to stay on the East Coast, to go to the West. But I think the first thing right now, he wants to get healthy, and he's come out a couple of times and says, I plan on playing in the month of September. So hopefully he heals as quick as Harp healed.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good call, by the way. Reese in San Francisco could be a good fit. And maybe he grew up a Giants fan. Did you grow up a Giants fan being from Sacramento? Did that automatically make you a Giants fan, or did you kind of root somewhere else?
I was a Giant fan because that was the closest thing to go to games, but I was more of a Yankee fan because when I grew up, they had a Saturday game of the week on every Saturday, and it seemed like the Yankees played every Saturday. So I watched them every Saturday, but I did go to a lot of Giant games, and they were a team that obviously I watched, and then eventually I got to go out there and play at Candlestick, which is not the greatest place to play, but at that time we had a lot of fun out there. There's no question about that.
Did you ever get hit in the face with a hot dog wrapper when you were playing there?
I got hit with a lot of things when we played. No, it was candlestick was. I tell you what, you better be ready to play baseball when you put the uniform out there, because you could go out there at 4:00 and take batting practice. No wind, the sun would be out. Then at 7:00, 7:30, the wind would howl. It'd get real cold, and the dirt would fly in your eyes. I mean, it was like, okay, we're ready. Let's go.
Yeah, and the old tale goes that when they were trying to put a ballpark there, the developers only went during the day. So
Exactly.
yeah, I don't
And
know.
it
I
was
don't know.
beautiful. We had that, we used to have extra hitting there. And when we go into San Francisco, maybe 1:00, 2:00, it was beautiful. No wind. The flag would be limp in center field. And then obviously once that sun went down, the fog would come in off the ocean there, and the wind would start blowing. It would test your mental toughness. There's no question about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you mentioned that you got cut, in high school from all your teams. I guess, for any of the younger people listening, I know we mentioned that too. How did the Phillies find you? Because I know scouting is,
Well,
it's a little bit different today, but how did the
right.
Phillies kind of get their eyes on a young Larry Bowa?
Well, when I got cut my senior year, they had a league in Sacramento. It was a summer league, and so I went out for that team and I made it. And when I was playing on the summer league team, the junior college coach, Sacramento junior college coach, came out and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come out for our team." And I looked at him. I said, "I didn't even play high school ball. How am I going to make your team?" He says, "I'm going to give you every opportunity to play every day with me." So I went out, tried out. I made it. I made all conference 2 years in a row. Eddie Bachman came and scouted me, and that's sort of how that evolved. And eventually I signed with the Phillies. I spent 3 years in the minor leagues, A, AA, and AAA. And then I went to the big leagues in 70 and then ended up playing 16 years in the big leagues. So, looking back on that, the opportunity came. I took advantage of it. But, there's also luck involved. There's a lot of guys that I knew who were probably better players than me, but never had the opportunity to play at a high level. And so it's being at the right place at the right time. And when the Phillies signed me and I eventually got to the big leagues in 70, they were in a rebuilding process. So even though I was struggling early in my career, they stayed with me, and eventually things turned around. I ended up getting over 2,000 hits in the big leagues, but made all-star teams, won gold gloves. But, it's one of those stories that, when you tell it, people go, "No way." And like I said, I try to tell kids, if you have dreams of doing something, don't let anybody tell you can't do it if you want it bad enough. And that's what I try to pass on to these younger kids coming up.
100%. And the defense really stands out. I guess when you look back at your career, you're one of the best defensive shortstops back when you played. And did you feel pressure at all at the plate because of that? Because, you're known for your defense? Because I know a lot of people would say, go catch the ball at shortstop and, we'll put you in the lineup and, it doesn't matter what you hit, go hit 250 and catch the ball. Did you have
Right.
any pressure on you offensively at all because of that?
Well, I didn't have any pressure, but I wanted to prove the naysayers that I could hit. I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I first came up, I wasn't a very good hitter. I learned how to hit, but it was through good coaching, hitting coaches that I had, guys that stuck with me, managers that stuck with me. I can't tell you how many swings I took in the batting cage in the wintertime trying to get better and trying to learn how to switch hit. But at that time, as you said, shortstop, second base, center field, catcher, strong up the middle defensively, let the big boys on the corners do the damage with the bat. And, that's sort of how it started out with me. And then eventually I became a tough out and started to get some hits. And then, we each had roles on our team back then. The little guys get on base for the big guys. And, you had to learn how to bunt. You had to learn how to steal bases and hit and run. Those were all elements that the little guy in the lineup had to be able to execute. And now I watch guys play and a bunt's put on every now and then. A guy can't lay down a bunt, and he's not what you call a home run hitter. I'm not saying everybody should be able to bunt, but when you don't hit 15 or 20 home runs, you should be able to do those little things. And I don't see that. And it's not because the player can't do it. I think it's because the analytics have said, well, we don't want to give away outs. We don't want to sacrifice bunt. We don't want to hit and run because we swing and miss too much. But those things that that I just mentioned are things that kept me in the big league because I was able to do it even when I wasn't a real good hitter. So there's a lot of things you can do to help your team win baseball games.
Yeah, and putting the ball in play is definitely at the top of that list. And
Right.
when Vida Blue passed away a few days ago, there's a stat that popped up, and it said that the last switch hitter in the American League was Vida Blue. And it got me thinking,
Right.
like I was going down some of these lineups and there's not a ton of switch hitters anymore. Do you have any like philosophy on why that is?
Well, I think one reason is because people think it's easy to switch hit because the ball's all coming into you. But what they don't understand is you got to be able to. You might face a right-hander 10 games in a row, and then all of a sudden the left-hander goes out there and you got to go on the other side of the plate. You got to maintain that swing during BP, regardless of who you're playing. So you have to maintain two swings. So I don't think it's as much as an advantage. It was an advantage to me because I was a good runner, above average runner. I could lay down bunts, I could hit and run. But I agree with you. There's not too many right now that stand out, and I think they just concentrate on one side of the plate. Hitting's very difficult, whether you're in the big leagues, minor leagues. The best hitters in baseball make 7 outs every 10 at bats, so it's not as easy as it looks on TV. You know, you're watching TV and a guy takes a pitch down the middle. You go, how can he take that? Well, there's a lot of elements that are involved there, and but I agree with you. There's not a lot of switch hitters right now in the big leagues.
Yeah. And when you flip on the TV, I'm sure, you see all the size of these shortstops. You mentioned you were a little guy. So, what, I mean, what's going through your head when you see the big guys? I know Ripken kind of was the trailblazer, and then Jeter was
Right.
also a big guy. There's a few others in between. And now you got guys that look like monsters and big guys playing shortstop now. I mean, what are you
Yeah.
thinking when you're seeing that, the evolution of the
Well, I'm
position?
just saying how much the game has evolved. It's a different game now. There's no question about it. And obviously offense is on the forefront of this. I think teams are willing to sacrifice defense if guys can hit the ball out of the ballpark. What's ironic about all this is when you watch playoff games and World Series games, there's not a lot of 10-9 games. It's 3-2, 2-1, 4-3. They're close games. You've got to make plays. You can't give other teams outs. But these guys are much bigger, faster, and stronger. There's no question. I think it has a lot to do with they all have their personal trainers now. They have the dietitians that give you what to eat, what not to eat. The weight rooms are much better. The clubhouses are better. So there's a lot of things going in their favor right now. But you can see that most teams are leaning towards more of an offensive part of the game at shortstop, whereas before it was, hey, defense is the most important, and whatever you do offensively is going to be icing on the cake.
And there's a lot of players that kind of go through the minor leagues moving are having to know 2 or 3 different positions. I mean, when Trey Turner came up, he was a shortstop, but then we saw him play second for a year in Washington. He played center field for a year in Washington. And that's kind of the norm now as guys are, needing to know how to play different positions. And usually it was 1 or 2 guys per roster. Now everybody has to know how to play different positions. Is this a
And I think that's
valuable trend or is it distracting?
I think it's distracting, but it is a trend. It's hard enough playing one position. Now you got to play 3 or 4 positions. I take my hat off to those guys. That's hard to do. But if I have a legit shortstop, I mean, I'm talking about a blue chip shortstop. I'm not making him switch positions. If I have a great center fielder, I'm not asking him to play right and left. If you have an elite player in a position, I'm leaving him there. But it gives the manager now more flexibility. And I don't understand why, because there's a DH now in both leagues. So if you want to get a guy off his feet or give him a blow, let him DH one day and get him off his feet. But the trend is, if the more positions you play, the better chance that you have of being on a big league roster. And that's why I think defense, there's a lot of defensive plays that aren't made because guys are playing second one day, playing third one day, playing short one day, playing center field one day. And again, it's hard to do that. It's very difficult. You're in different cutoffs and relays. There's different positions you go to on a bunt play. Pickoff plays are different. The ball comes off the bat different when you're playing on the left side as opposed to the right side. And you're asking a player to do this, switching positions, and maybe in a week he plays 3 or 4 different positions. And like I said, I take my hat off to the guy that can do that. I watched a guy play last night that you guys have. I think his name is Schmidt.
Yep.
very impressive. I've watched him play now 3 or 4 games. I really like this kid, and they listening to the commentary last night. I guess his plans. He's supposed to be an elite third baseman with a cannon, and I saw him playing second last night. I know he's played short when Crawford was on the IL. So I mean, here's a guy that with great tools, and he's impressed the heck out of me. Again, I've only seen him 3 or 4 games, but that seems to be the norm now. When you get a guy like that, move him around, and obviously it looks like he swings the bat very well.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of people in the organization that are saying just keep him at third base, and he is somebody
Right.
that the Giants really like. They like his glove at third base, and Brandon Crawford always talks about how impressive he's been, especially in spring training. But Casey Schmidt definitely off to a really good start, and I think they're still looking forward to the bat developing a little bit more, but I guess we'll have to wait and see with him. And I guess switching gears here for a second, this is kind of a random one out of the blue, but who's the toughest pitcher you ever faced? Who comes to mind?
Man, I tell you what, there were a lot when I played. Bob Gibson, because of his mental toughness, he was a mean pitcher. Seaver was tough. Nolan Ryan was tough. I could go on and on. I mean, I shouldn't say fortunate, maybe unfortunate. I had to play against a lot of Hall of Fame pitchers that are in the Hall of Fame now. But the thing about those guys, their mental makeup was different than guys pitch today. I mean, when a guy throws one up and in today, you see him patting his chest saying, my bad, my bad. That didn't happen. When Gibson and those guys threw one inside at you, they would take 4 steps towards you and stare you down and try to intimidate you. It was a lot different. And again, not trying to compare the era when I played to now, but the mentality of a pitcher back then was they wanted to pitch the first inning and they wanted to be the last guy off the mound in the ninth. And now you have, because of the analytics, guy goes 5 or 6 innings, he's out of there. And you go to your bullpen, and you have your 3 or 4 guys out of the bullpen that come in going 95 to 97, and that's sort of how teams have set up their rotations. But back then, you had 3 or 4 pitchers in a rotation that each one of them, their mentality was, I want a complete game here. And if they didn't get a complete game, they're probably taking it into the 7th or 8th inning.
Yeah, and there's a few guys that are still like that. Luckily, Sandy Alcantara, Miami. There's a few of them out there that still,
there are
a complete game.
And I'm not blaming. You know what? I'm not blaming pitchers, because it's sort of like, why fight City Hall? This is the way the analytics say we're doing it. I'm sure if you ask every pitcher out there, do you want to be out there in the 9th inning? They're going to say, yeah. I mean, I watched the game last night, and Woods needed 1 out to get a win. He pitched 4 2/3, and they took him out of the game. And there was 2 outs and nobody on. And nothing against Cap, who made the move. Maybe he was told X amount of pitches, no matter what, get him out of there.
Yeah, he
back
was on
in
a
the day,
pitch count. He was. Yeah, they set it up to the game. He was on a pitch count.
Yeah, back in the day, wins were important to pitchers. It seems like today it wins, though. I mean, I've heard it from analytic people. Doesn't matter, wins or luck. And I disagree with that 100%. There's some guys that know how to win baseball games, and there's some guys that if you stay close to them, they're going to find a way to lose it. So I disagree completely on that part of it. That wins don't mean nothing, and batting average doesn't mean anything. I'm sorry, but whether it's old school, new school, I'm a baseball guy. I think those are 2 important stats.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And of course, I think that it's funny because wouldn't you think that, because you mentioned that players are bigger, faster, stronger, don't you think they'd be more conditioned to go deep in the games? And here they're not, apparently.
But again, I think we've created that. When I say we, I think the front office and analytic people have created that. I think these guys all want to pitch deep in the game. I really do. They're competitive. But when you go to spring training and the most pitches a guy gets out of spring training is 60, and the season starts, how do you expect him to go into the 7th, 8th, 9th inning out of spring training? And then again, these general managers, presidents, owners, they set their teams up now where it seems like most, not all, most teams, their strength is the back end of their bullpen. So they're basically saying, give us 5 innings. That's, you see the so-called relief. We tried it last night, the opener last night. It didn't work. We brought in a relief pitcher to start the game, and then we brought in Falter because they said that his ERA in the first inning was, I don't know, 9 or 10. So they said, well, let's try it this way. And I know all the runs were unearned, but he still gave up a lot of hits. And so that didn't work for us last night. And it works for a team like Tampa Bay. So if one team gets it to be effective, I think every team in baseball, it's a copycat league, and there's no question about that. They think if Tampa Bay can do it, then we can do it. And you got to have the right mentality to do that. You have to have the right pitchers to do that. And it's not one size fits all. You know, Tampa's been very fortunate. They have a pitching factory down there. It doesn't matter who they put out there. They know how to get people out. And but it doesn't always happen with every organization. I mean, I noticed the stats last night that the Giants are like towards the bottom in their bullpen. And it might be because maybe you're going to it too much. I don't know, because I don't follow them that much. But the reason I'm talking about it today is because I watched the game last night, and the commentary was that they are not where they should be as far as the bullpen's concerned.
Yeah, most definitely. They're definitely not. A few more minutes here, but I do want to ask about coaching too. So you retire, you play your last game in '85, and then go right into coaching. Did you? And this is an interesting question. Did you start coaching because you wanted to stay in the game, or because you wanted to coach? And I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, that makes sense. But first of all, I ended up with the Mets, and before I left the last out of that series, Frank Cashin was the manager. He says, we'd like you to come back next year as a utility player. And I said, let me think about it. And I went home, and there were some, I was used to playing. I played every day. There were balls that I wasn't getting to, and I went, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I love the game too much. I know I should be making these plays, even though they wanted me as a utility player. And then Jack McKeon called me when he found out I retired, said, I'd like you to stay in the game. I want you to manage. And I figured, I'd be going to A-ball or something. And he put me at AAA in Vegas, and we won the championship. And, hindsight being 20/20, after I won the championship there, he says, hey, we want you to manage a big team. If I could do everything over again, I would have stayed there at AAA, because I think I was rushed there to go to the big leagues. But, everything turned out okay for me. But I wanted to give back to the game, all the things that I learned from different mentors to kids coming up. And I like baseball. I love baseball. And so to stay in the game as long as I have. I'm still involved. I'm assistant to the general manager. I go watch our minor leagues when the big team's on the road. I go to all our home games. So, like I said, baseball, everything I have, I owe to baseball, and I respect the game. And I've been very fortunate the Phillies have stayed with me as long as they have and given me opportunities.
Yeah, and just to build off that, I mean, they've brought you back so many times, a base coach, a manager, bench coach. Now you mentioned senior advisor to the GM. I mean, what is it about the Phillies organization that you love? Because it seems like you bleed Philly red.
I think the big thing is they gave me an opportunity. There wasn't like a lot of teams knocking the door down for me to play baseball. I mean, I look back at people that have given me an opportunity, and I want to give something back to them. And they did give me the opportunity. If it wasn't for the Phillies, who knows? I mean, I probably would have been coaching maybe at a high school, or I'd have been involved in sports in some way, but they gave me every opportunity to be successful. And I think that, respect's a two-way street. They respect what I did, and I respect what they did for me. So I'm very happy doing what I do. I'm very lucky to be involved in baseball as long as I have. And as long as I'm healthy, knock on wood, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing.
And did you like your quick stint as a TV guy on MLB Network? I remember watching you do breakdowns and stuff on there. Did you enjoy that aspect of it?
I did. I think I've done everything in baseball. I did something with MLB. I did something with ESPN. I had a good time with that. The thing about when you're on MLB, you go there, and whatever your shift is that night, I mean, you get to watch every single game. There's so many TVs that you want to look here, look there, and then eventually they'll tell you, hey, from the fifth inning on, we want you to watch Phillies and Giants and tell us what you got there. So, but you're talking about baseball 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That's what you have when you were at the MLB station.
Absolutely. And God bless, because I know that you do the segment with Christopher Russo every now and then, the Mad Dog. So you're a saint for that.
I have a good time with that. Mad Dog, he's very opinionated, and but he's always been fair with me. And I just like baseball. I like it to be played the right way. I like guys that are on the other teams respect the other teams. I like guys being good teammates. I also like the competitiveness, So I like I like the way the game. I don't like some of the rules that are going on now, but I understand the game has definitely changed, and you got to go with the flow and make the adjustments.
100%. Larry Bowa, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This is a blast. And anytime you're in San Francisco, just come holler and say hello.
I sure will. And thank you for having me.
All right. Everybody can listen to the podcast follow it on Twitter and Instagram at RizzoCast. Go check it out. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you find your podcast. Thank you for listening and have a great day.